and Africa, because it says here Africa's hospitality sector is poised for growth. That's according to PwC. They've just come out with a report in that regard. And in the Joburg studio is Nikki Forster from PwC. So things going well, Nikki, despite the fact that, particularly in South Africa, the economy is on a fragile footing.
It's definitely on a fragile footing, Lindsay. And yes, things are going well, and we anticipate things to continue to go well. But as you quite rightly say, it's not going to shoot the lights out, but we're seeing solid, low level, 3-5% growth, but growth. And I think that's the first time in a number of years we've seen these really good signs of recovery.
Where's it coming from? Is it people from Africa coming down to South Africa, going to Johannesburg, doing some business, doing some shopping in Sandton City? Is it foreigners coming from abroad, Germans coming to Cape Town and spending on the Atlantic seaboard? Can you characterise different nodes for us?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of those. But if we look at the number of arrivals, which was just over 9 million in the past year, over 6 million of those are actually from within the African continent, either from sort of neighbouring countries or from many areas further north in Africa where development is now beginning to happen. So yes, they're coming to Johannesburg for meetings, they're coming to South Africa. We don't entirely know why, but the biggest portion of our arrivals into this country from other countries is at this point from Africa. But let's not forget, we also do have a good number of arrivals still from Europe and the US.
Can you characterise the arrivals that are coming from Africa? As I said, is it people that are using South Africa as a business base and then travelling from there? What is the nature of the person that is coming? Can you typically say how it has changed over the last couple of years, for example?
It's very difficult to know, Lindsay, because once so many of those people arrive within our borders, we're not necessarily able to track exactly where they go. But yes, I mean, if we just look at the number of people we are sending up into Africa to do business, there are equally a large number of people coming to South Africa to do business. But we mustn't forget there are also people who will be coming home to South Africa or live just across our borders who come for other reasons other than business.
How is the industry adapting to this new influx of visitors from Africa? Are hotel rooms suddenly starting to go up? Because you can't obviously say, well, last month arrivals were 11.4% higher, so let's stick up a few more rooms. There's a long time lag. Is the industry prepared for this?
The industry, I think, is prepared for it. If we look back 2-3 years, we had a huge gap between what was available in terms of supply of hotel rooms and the demand for those hotel rooms. The reasons we're seeing the increase in occupancy now and a little bit of a push in room rates and overall increases in revenue is that more people are travelling, the demand has increased and it's beginning to fill that excess supply.
Very good. What about prices? Because I was recently in a major European city and the price of the hotel, it was a 3-star hotel. The price that I paid was less in that European city than you would pay in Sandton, for example, on a Friday or a Saturday night. Is that purely driven by demand or is it driven by greed?
It's largely driven by demand at this stage. We've been through a number of years where there hasn't been much of a rate increase here. Once occupancies start to rise, people will feel a bit more confident to push their rates up. But if you think back a few years, there were a lot of specials and deals around here. And I would imagine that you're seeing a similar thing in Europe.
I noticed an article in one of the newspapers or one of the trade journals recently, I can't remember which, but it was on an aeroplane, saying that they thought that Johannesburg was going to be the most popular destination in Africa for visitors over the next couple of years, I think it was. That was the time period they were using. And the only city that was actually going to lose visitors was Cape Town. Would you concur with that?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I haven't seen that statistic, actually. I would actually go...
Joburg, first of all.
Joburg, first of all, yes. I mean, I would expect still the numbers in Joburg to continue to hold up. Cape Town, interesting. I think Cape Town's actually doing quite a lot to attract people throughout the year. Obviously, they always have a poor season over the winter, but they're working hard at that. But I'd actually like to expand that beyond the South African borders and say actually some of the most visited cities in Africa will not be within South Africa within the next 5 years, but they will be the Lagoses and other similar growing cities in Africa.
We've just been talking to somebody, or trying to talk to somebody in Maputo about Mozambique's boom. So Maputo obviously is one of the ones that could fill that gap that you've just been talking about. What's the outlook though now, especially with the rand doing what it's doing? Because people come for business. It doesn't matter whether the rand's 7 or 10 to the US dollar. But if someone is saying, you know what, I've got a choice between Thailand or Cape Town, with the rand at 10, suddenly Cape Town comes back into the equation.
It does. You're very right. It does. The one element in it that we've still got to get right is the flights. In terms of flights, South Africa is still quite an expensive destination, but once you get here, I think we can now offer value for money.
And are we being used as a base? Again, I talk about this, but there's so much going on in Africa. But do people come to South Africa and say, I'm gonna stay here for 2 weeks, I'm gonna have a few meetings, and then I'm gonna go up to Lagos via South Africa? Is that also something that is going to become a trend in the future?
I think it is happening now, but if we look at the market, certainly in, say, Lagos, there's considerable development in Lagos. I think in the next few years, you're actually going to see people flying directly into Lagos and doing business there, and not necessarily touching South Africa unless they need to.
So the outlook is fairly positive. We haven't got too much of an oversupply of hotel rooms. We've got a weakening currency. We've got an economy that isn't shooting the lights out, as we said, but is growing. And we are the biggest economy in Africa, and we can be used as a hub for the rest of Africa, which is booming.
Yes, absolutely. I see positive growth going forwards. I see a lot of opportunity. I just think people need to be a little bit cautious. Yeah, it's early days.
Just one last thing before we close this, Nikki. Are we overpriced? I live in Cape Town, and I get really cross when I have to go into a place and they charge me 50 to 70 rand for a glass of very, very ordinary wine. Are we going to kill the goose that is laying these golden tourist eggs?
Yeah, we have to be careful on that. We really do. Having said that, I was actually in London recently, and what I paid there was 3-4 times what you would pay here. So let's get it into perspective. But yes, for people living in South Africa and earning rands, we need to be careful.